And the crowd goes wild. Ah! There's a little bit of energy here. Right on, man. Third day of the conference, and y'all are here to learn about how to get notifications, how to get the signal through the noise, how to find out when you've got some issues going on with your subscriptions and your resources, or potentially when we have issues with our services. That never happens with anybody. Doesn't matter what hyperscale cloud provider you're talking about.
Yeah, we never have it out.
No, the industry as a whole. So that's what this session is going to be about. My name is Rick Claus. I lead a team of folks that help put on the event, that also create technical content. This is a session near and dear to my heart, and I'm joined today by the fantastic Tajinder.
Hi, my name is Tajinder. I'm part of the Azure infrastructure team. I'm responsible for two fun topics of Azure reliability and capacity. So I say all the fun things to you all.
Nice. Now, this is an interesting session because this was delivered, for the most part, almost each year that we've had Microsoft Ignite, and we have different people delivering it, including the teams that are responsible for creating the communications plans around these types of things. And so we decided that it was definitely worthwhile to be able to have it again today for this one.
Yeah, and this is the team that I partner with very deeply. This is Azure Communications team. They're responsible for telling you all what's happening with incidents, with outages as they happen. To just level set, this is a communications team. This is not an incident or problem-solving team. They're not reliability experts. They are not customer support by any means, and they are not marketing or PR. Their sole responsibility is to tell you all about incidents as they occur, so you have the real-time information.
And just to be clear, if you didn't miss that last point, they're not marketing.
Yeah,
That's
and I am
involved.
marketing. I partner with them very, very deeply.
So this team sits inside of Azure Core, inside of Azure Engineering, that's responsible for these.
Yeah. And they have devised 5 principles to base off all their communications. And to make it real for you all, there's an incident that happened in October, on October 29th.
Yeah.
We always make this session real by talking about incidents as they happen. And there was an incident involving Azure Front Door on October 29th. If you've not heard about it, great. If you have, we're going to talk about it in detail, what happened, how it happened, and what we learned. So this is the example that we'll use throughout the session.
And the interesting part about this is each time that this session's been delivered during Microsoft Ignite, there's been some kind of an incident that's happened prior to this. And so we were a little bit concerned that maybe upper level management might want us to break the cycle and not have something. But no, AFD is actually a very interesting one. We do this in context, and literally the final resources that are available to you are went posted like the week before today. So it's good stuff. And this also, a lot of this stuff also applies to other hyperscale clouds. This is not unique to us. This is also how the industry handles these types of massive scale events that affects thousands upon thousands of customers. So we're here to share.
Yeah, and we're not shying away. Like, transparency is the backbone of how we communicate.
Right.
So we're not going to shy away from talking about this. So there are 5 principles I was talking about that the communications teams keep in mind as they're devising all these processes for how we communicate to our customers and how we can get better as well. In a nutshell, the 5 principles. The backbone of that, as I said, is transparency. And transparency is something that we are taking to heart. This is something I think as industry leaders, you should expect from us. We should be very transparent about why our services failed, what are the challenges that we're facing, and how we're learning from it. And more frankly, how can customers avoid this in the future? So transparency is the backbone of however we do our communication processes. And the 5 principles are speed, how quickly you get information; accuracy, how accurate the information is; discoverability, how quickly you can discover those communication channels; parity between different services within Microsoft; and again, transparency. It is the backbone of how we communicate. I'll talk about the first one, and then I'll hand it over to Rick. The first one is around how quickly we can get you that information. That's a metric we track. We have an AIOps channel called Brain, which automates all the communications to you all. So the current time that we have is 10 minutes. So to keep it in perspective, whenever an incident happens, you get the information within 10 minutes because of this AI model called Brain. And there are 90% of such services that are covered through Brain, so you get 90% of outages within 10 minutes. The rest of it is still manual, and we have the SLA of 60 minutes. So whatever the outage happens, you get the initial information within 10 minutes and the more manual one within 60 minutes. So that's the metric that we track, how quickly we can get the information to you all.
And we'll be pointing through a bunch of different resources throughout this that you'll be able to configure. But the first one that I want to make sure that everyone knows about is something called Azure Service Health, or ASH. This is interesting. I'd like to see a show of hands. Do you know about Azure Service Health? If you do, put your hand up, which is great. And I would say that's about 30-odd% of the room put their hand up. Can't see online, I apologize. In actual
and
fact,
that aligns with how we see the metrics as well. So.
Literally, from what we see for people using this particular service, we see between 20 to 30% of every single Microsoft subscription using it. I think that's a problem. I think more people need to use Azure Service Health because that is your granular view of what's directly impacting your services. And if you don't use Azure Service Health right now, we're going to give you some pointers on some very basics of how it sets up and how it works. But really, you're going to want to go and dive in more and make sure that you have this configured. It's the minimum bar. Otherwise, you're just relying on external web page that tells you is it up or down with down detector or something else like that. This gets you granular capability as far as the Azure Service Health. You've got the clicker, right? Yeah, good. Yeah, so basically Azure Service Health gives you an absolutely personalized dashboard. So it's not just a generic what's down. It's more specifically about the resources inside your subscription or across subscriptions or down to individual resource groups or down to individual services within inside of those resource groups. You choose the granularity. It also is there where you can get individual notifications based on all three of those levels. The caveat that I mentioned here is, okay, so say 20 to 30% of you use it right now, the other 80 to 70 don't. The biggest common mistake that we see is that people get too granular and get too much signal and ends up becoming noise. So you have to adjust. Try it out, see how they fire, and then adjust for what makes sense for you for when you want to know things are down or when things are up. So watch out that. You can use different levels of targeted communication, and you can get very sophisticated with that. And then, obviously, you're able to go through and share details and updates with others if you need to, or you can just simply rely on your notifications for your own dashboard and what that looks like. I thought I would show you quickly just, I recorded a quick little video before this just to show you what Service Health actually looks like. So here is the Azure portal. I've logged in, top right-hand corner. You can see I'm alive. This is my demo account that I have right now. I've also gone through and I've recorded this because, yeah, you know, there might be a service outage while I'm showing you. That was my joke. You can laugh at that one. But really, it's also because of the time delays of the waiting for services to go off and do different things. So quite simply put, go into Azure Service Health. From there, you get an all-up view of the entire system as a whole, and we actually have an archival issue that's there, and that's why you see a nice little graphic of what was impacting across the world. Go up and click on Create a New Service Health Entry Rule for a quick alert, and again, you can start to scope stuff. It's all about scoping. You can go at a subscription level or at an entire intra-domain level. I'm going in here and leaving it on one of my subscriptions called Global Demos. Then you can choose all the services that are present inside that particular area, all the regions that I care about, and even specific types of alerts. So again, this is that filter through noise. I may not care about the fact that things are going down inside of East Asia or inside of Canada 1 or Canada 2. I care most specifically about where my particular resources are for this workload that I want to go off and monitor. So that's one level of filtering that you can go off and do. As I mentioned, you can filter based on resource group. This is a demo tenant, and so there's this little event called Microsoft Ignite going on right now, so I thought I would throw an alert on Ignite Breakout 319. One of my colleagues is doing that one there. Give it a name, doesn't matter, make sure it makes sense to you. And then the bare basics here is simply give me some notifications. First thing I'll call out here, the default is just simply my login ID. If we all know anything about managing servers, you're probably going to be using resource groups. You're probably going to have distribution lists that you're going to want to hit as far as notifications are concerned. Potentially tiers of distribution lists based on how complex you want to get. We give you that flexibility, but the default minimum bar is just the person that's creating that individual alert. You're going to want to change that. Now, when this is created, it goes off and creates a resource inside or an artifact inside of the Azure portal. It takes a little bit of time to refresh. But once it's actually done, you can go down to the health alerts area, because that was a health alert we created, and you can see I've got one here called Ignite Breakout. Inside Ignite Breakout, it gives you the details of where it was created, where it's stored, and what the scope is. But on the left-hand side is where the cool stuff is. How many times has this actually had any changes done to it? How many times has it fired in the history if I needed to track that? And then more importantly, from an automation perspective, is what actions is it doing besides just sending an email, and what automations can it do as well? The default is, I'll send you a mail. You can get up to, I'll send you an SMS, I'll send you a text alert if you want, or it can even go through and say, here's a webhook, here's a Teams notification, here's a automation workflow that goes off and does a bunch more stuff. You are unlimited. And this is a bit hesitant for some people, a bit too big, too broad. Start off with simple and then get more complex and figure out how some automation can go off and work with you. That's the limited basics I wanted to share.
And you can go as high level as you want,
Yes.
like I said, emails. Or you can be very customized and do webhooks, do dashboards on top of it as well. So Azure Service Health is a great one to look at. I hope we increase from 20, 30% to like 40% after this session. That's our goal, that's our
Just
metric.
because of this session, it's going to go to 40. I can trust it. Here we go.
So that's a metric that we're tracking here.
So next up is discoverability. As I mentioned, watch out for that signal to noise ratio. Don't try to overdo it. Understand the concepts, understand how they fire, that sort of stuff. This is just simply some options notification. And as I mentioned, webhooks, you can send a Slack message, you can send a Teams message, you can fire off automations, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Now, this is an area that we've shown you just inside of Microsoft Azure, but this also applies in the future with the concept of parity across all of our services. So right now, each of our individual services, you know, Xbox being down or M365 updates and stuff like that, Azure updates, all sort of things. We're moving towards a more unified plan for how we handle these and be consistent across the board. We're not quite there yet, but we're here in an Azure space, an Azure bunch of people talking about this from an Azure perspective. Whatever you end up setting up and working with, don't worry, it'll be merged in together and brought together for best practices across the board.
Yeah, and we're standardizing across our portfolio. I don't know if you know, Microsoft is a big company. It takes time to implement these things, but across Azure, we are trying to bring parity across outages for every service possible. So this is something that we have been working on. Lastly, transparency is something, like I said, is the backbone of how we communicate to our customers. We want to be as transparent as possible. What happened, how it happened, what did we learn, and again, how can customers avoid this? So transparency is the #1 pillar that we base our communications on. In terms of transparency, we start with Azure status page. So every outage, there is an alert on Azure status page, again, which is almost there within 30 minutes. So every outage, we are very transparent in our Azure Health status page. Secondly, we do something called PIRs, post-incident reviews. These are in notes form. For big incidents, we put out a post-incident review within 3 days. So for AFD, we put out notes of what happened, how it happened within 3 days. For smaller incidents, the SLA is around 14 days. So there is the detailed notes about what happened, how it happened, and what did we learn in our PIRs. If you have, again, a plug to service as alerts, if you have the service as alerts, the PIR link is there. So if your subscription was impacted, you will get a link to the PIR where you can learn more about that incident.
Yeah, that was right at the very top level of the graphic of the world and stuff like that. You can see historical events. I just want to call it the status page just as a minute. Yep. That's what a lot of people rely on to be able to get updates for what's going on and how things are updated. He and I, as we were planning this session, were talking about that, and he's like, did you go to the status page and take a look? And I hadn't at that point in time. And then, as we'll show later on, it literally shows you each of the major comms and each of the major steps that happen there. But then also at the very top on that status page, it actually says your refresh rate. So you could sit just with the status page on there, and it refreshes every 2 minutes or every 5 minutes or whatever happens to be.
Yeah.
When the official comms updates the next thing inside of the actual status page itself.
Yeah, so we update it every other minute to make sure that you know what's happening. Even if you're not logging onto your portal, you can go to the status page and know about an incident. And last but not the least, we have been doing the pictures from an AIR, which is Azure Incident Retrospective, where we do a deep dive into what happened in form of a video. So we do a live stream almost every other week now, where we invite our engineering leaders to learn more about, hey, you own the service, tell us what happened. Tell us what happened, what did we learn from it, how did you implement the changes, and how can customers learn from it as well. So these videos are great, and these are live, so you can all log into it, ask questions. There are SMEs on the chat that can answer your questions. So this is something that you should really look into. Again, the link is in the PIR, the link is in that notes form that you get through the services alerts. So these live streams are great. I'll talk about it more in detail in a bit, but something to look into. So these are the 5 principles that I talked about. Now let's bring it to life through a life cycle of an outage. Like what happens before an outage, what happens during an outage, and what happens after an outage. So before an outage, this is not a lot we do, but we ask customers to do a few things. There are a few recommendations that we would love for you to look into. The first one is, again, very tied to Azure Service Health. Like, who are the people in your organizations that need to know? You can customize your alerts and say that, hey, these are the group of people that should be alerted when there is an outage. So identifying who are the people who should know is really, really critical, and you can implement those changes through Service Health.
And if it hasn't already been said, you have to kind of guard this and come up with a strategy for how you choose these individual people, because you might not want to notify absolutely everybody things are going down initially, but then roll it out and have some level of stages. Again, try first, see how it works, and then continue to adjust as you go.
Yep. And secondly, like, what are the signals that you should be collecting to prepare for an outage? The number one, as I said, is Service Health Alert, but you can also look at Azure Resource Health. This is very resource level alert that you can set up. So for example, if you care just about that VM, just about that storage account, or just about that SQL database, you can put a health alert on that to whenever it goes down, you know that beforehand. So, that's resource level monitoring that you can do. Then there are schedule event as well, where you're notified if there is a planned maintenance event that is happening, you get notified before that. And last but not the least, Azure Monitor. Azure Monitor is a great tool which has a suite of tools and resources that you can leverage to get that monitoring for all the resources that you care about.
So again, think about the resource levels and also think about the impact levels as well. You can keep it broad as far as our layer of the platform having issues, or down to individual servers or other things, and even performance issues, like why is my IaaS instance or why is my SQL server maxing out at 2 o'clock in the morning every day at 11 o'clock? Those are individual resource health entries and fires that you can go off and include as far as signals. Yep. But again, the cautionary note, too much signal equals too much noise. So don't overwhelm yourself.
So this is a go-to to you all. Look at the resources that you care about that are critical for you. Put an alert on it so that you know what's happening. Thirdly, like, what are the services that we have for making sure that you are more reliable? This is not a deep dive into reliability. There's so much you can do, but I'm going to give you a high-level overview. What are the options you have, and there are much more. You can start with availability zones, so you're protected from like de-risking your data center outage. So your availability zones are outside of the region that you have your mission-critical application on. So if you have AZs, you are protecting yourself if there is something wrong with the data center. So definitely take advantage of AZs. Azure Site Recovery is a DR solution for DRing all your critical workloads. A lot of you use it for backup purposes, for planned failovers as well. Then there are storage redundancy options. Did you know that there are 3 copies of your data kept all the time? You decide based on the redundancy option where that data is kept. You can keep those same copies of data in the same data center. That is cheaper. But if you are trying to protect yourself from outage, you can keep it in different data centers or even different zones as well. So there are different storage redundancy options that you can choose from. Similarly, there are options from virtual machines as well, which virtual machine scale sets. So you have 2 sets of VMs that are in different zones. So again, if something goes wrong with that particular zone, you are not doing anything with your application. Your application runs smoothly. So VM scale sets is something you can look at. And last but not the least, Azure Backup. Azure Backup is used for backing up your critical workloads like virtual machines. So there are a lot of services available for you to leverage for making sure that you are more reliable. And lastly, we have a lot of resources that you can leverage. We can start with Azure Essentials. Azure Essentials give you high-level overview of what's the reliability pattern that you have for your application and how you can get better. So Azure Essentials is something that you can look at. There is Azure Cloud Adoption Framework as well that gives you the landing zone information. So once you get into Azure, you know how reliable your application are, so you can assess that. And once you are in Azure, there is well-architected framework that goes very detailed into your application. So you get reference architectures and examples of how to run that application smoothly.
So I'm about to say, this whole section for Act 1 is basically, these are all the resources available to you. These are some things you should be thinking about. And also, as I always like to say, right-size this to the workload you're trying to monitor and for the size and the scope that you're doing. Even those resources as well. They're made to be quite large and quite resilient and show you all the possible options, but maybe only a subset of how you're going to go off and use those are going to apply to you. And I'll also caveat by saying, on the middle part for the services, obviously, there's going to be cost implications for some of these services, so you may want to, again, have that as a balance for a discussion when you're going off and architecting your solution.
Yeah, we talk about this shared responsibility, which you're going to touch on later, is we give you the resilient foundation, like all the data centers that we have and all the IS components of storage, compute and networking that we can provide you. But there are a lot of services on top of it that is your responsibility to leverage. For example, Azure Backup, you don't need to back up all the VMs. There are a lot of like test devs that you have. That would be an overkill. So these are the types of resources that we give you so that you can do the analysis of, hey, these are my mission critical applications. I need to protect them better. These are my tested them. I'm okay not having a backup plan for that. So once you do that type of analysis, you know what are the resources you need to really leverage that we provide you. So this is something we call a shared responsibility model.
Yeah.
Act 2 is during an outage. This is the fun part. I say that very sarcastically because there was an outage on October 29th that I was deeply involved in. So there's a lot we do to make sure that you get all the information as quickly as possible, to make sure that you can make those decisions quickly. If you need to move your workloads, you can. So we try to get the information to you as soon as possible. There are a few principles that we keep in mind. I'm going to go over it one at a time. The first is we're building for scale. How we communicate is we're not going to go to every customer and say, hey, this is how your workload is running. This is the incident that we're dealing with, and this is what you do. This is not scalable. So we're building a scalable model. This is what my colleagues back in Redmond said, that we are building irrigation systems versus refilling stations. So the information flows through the metaphoric taps that you have. So you have access to that information as soon as possible. So we're building for scale for a communication. And second is democratizing information. This is real, and this is very true, close to my heart. We are not treating customers separately. It doesn't matter if your company is a multi-billion-dollar company and spending $1 billion a year, or it's my dad's company, 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗃 International, which spends like $10 a month. You get the same information at the same time. So I want to bust this myth. If you are a strategic customers, you don't get that information quickly or better information. All the customers get the same information at the same time.
So literally, Walmart finds out at the same time that Bob's Hardware does that there's something going on, and it's the same mechanism, same communication channels, same options for notification across the board.
Yep. And we're doing it internally as well. That's the third point, how we are unifying our communications. So if you call your account manager, or you call Satya, if you have his number, you're going to get the same information because we're providing them with those points about what the incident is all about, what are we doing for mitigating it. So we're doing it internally as well. There is one source of truth. So that's what we're working on. The fourth one is sharing. We want to share information to you as quickly as possible, as quickly as we know. For example, like for AFD1, we started communicating, hey, this is 4 hours away from mitigation. So you can make your decisions based on your application. So we try to share as much as possible, as soon as possible, so you can make those choices in terms of incidents. And last but not the least, how we can help you through support. A support ticket might not be the best idea every time. There are people, the support team is great, but if there is an incident and we have a lot of information out there through a status page, through service head alerts, contacting support might not be the best idea. So you should contact support based on certain criteria that Rick is going to touch on.
Yeah, and to expand on that one there as an example, again, ideally, proactively, ahead of time, you set up alerts, you've been notified in different ways proactively through your automation, and again, equitably distributed across all of our customers have access to all the same tools. Support tickets in the past used to be done as a thought of, oh, I need to make sure I can claim a credit to get it back on my account as far as my SLA being breached and stuff like that. You don't need to set it up in order to be able to qualify for that. You're going to have that handled for you on the billing on that side of things. So really, it kind of bubbles down to you should contact support and file a ticket if there is something that the symptoms don't match the public visibility of what we believe the symptoms are and how it's impacting the customers. If you're getting strangeness going on that is not quite what the impact of what the Azure front door outage was and it was something else, you could log a ticket and you could investigate that, and that actually would help us potentially as one more level of signal of this area is actually being affected in a larger space. But again, only if the symptoms don't match what we're already publicly telling people. The second time you might want to do this is specifically if there are troubleshooting recommendations that we make and publish on the status health page or through our communication channels, and you're trying to work through them and it's not working for you. Then again, that might be indicative of different situations or different scenarios, in which case you should definitely file a ticket. You don't have to do it for credit or for anything else. It's really just those two things. And it's going to be escalated and handled the same way as any other ticket that is there.
Exactly. And we see that going down actually. So this is really good, which tells us we're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
Our communications are working, like the status page is working, the service health is working. So we're seeing the support tickets going down for incidents that involve a lot of customers. So that is a sign that we're going in the right direction. But yeah, like Rick was saying, support ticket might not be the best idea for that particular situation.
Yeah. Now, an interesting thing is that there's obviously different sizes of incidents that happen at our level in the hyperscaler cloud kind of thing. And so based on that particular size, you can think of it small, medium, large. We kind of went with a, that's interesting, to, what's going on? To, whoa, this is big. So on the small side or the minor, you can think of this as, hey, we've got a single service that's kind of doing something really strange. It's inside of one isolated region, or it's inside of one zone inside of a region. Something's going on, but it hasn't escalated. It hasn't gone any further than where it is. And basically, you're going to get some regular updates that are happening on the Azure status page. If you had alerts fired up with service health, you would still continue to get those until they're resolved. But it doesn't really warrant a PIR. After the event, like the other ones do, where we go through a full detailed explanation of what goes on. So those are the smaller or more minor ones. The middle ones, the medium-sized things, that's where it actually starts to impact multiple services because something's going on in a particular region, let's say, or potentially it's going beyond the size of the availability zone. Those medium ones, they are going to get a more detailed, documented PIR. That will happen within the time frame of the 2-week window after the event, where we have the official, this is what happened, this was the impact, and everything else along those lines. You would be linked to these if you were impacted inside of your health portal.
Again, a plug for Azure Service Health.
Absolutely. And then the last one's the, whoa, watch out, man, this is super large. Azure front door. It's a little big. Impacted a lot of regions, impacted a lot of customers, and was very much across multiple regions, multiple services. We've got more details about that coming up later on. Basically, they'll get the PIR in this size ones actually generally faster as a draft PIR, and then they'll get the final one. But then they'll also get a full debrief with the engineering leads about, hey, what went on? Give us the background. How are we changes to making that doesn't happen again? That's the Azure Incident Review, which comes up later on. Those are the kind of levels of what we got, the small, medium, large.
Yep. Check of hands. Who was impacted by the AFD incident? Oh, no. Okay. That sounds about right.
I think everyone had their hand up there.
Almost everyone had their hand up. So I want to walk you through how that AFD incident happened, more from a comms perspective and what we did. And there's a detailed video which I'll talk about more that covers the technical aspects of it. So during the day, October 20th, I remember that very, very vividly. That's the most hours that I've worn my headphones listening to engineering videos on what the F is going on. So there was a lot going on that day. So we started seeing customer impact around 15:45 UTC, which is around 9 a.m. Pacific. That's the first time we heard from customers, hey, there is something going on. We posted our first comms within 30 minutes to our Azure status page. That is, again, the principle of speed in action here. We wanted to get the comms out as soon as possible. We did not have all the details at that time, but we wanted to get the information out there of what's happening. And customers got the service health alerts 2 minutes after. So there was a push model of getting the information to customers as soon as possible. Customers are facing issues with logging into Azure portal as well. So within 90 minutes, we failed over Azure portal as well. So it started working within 90 minutes. After initial deployment of the last good known configuration, we started mitigating and started getting to the fixed configuration that customers can use for accessing their Azure portal. So after working through all those dependencies, getting feedback from customers, hey, this is working or not, we finally confirmed the mitigation around midnight UTC, which is around 4 p.m. Pacific. So the whole day was 8.5 hours of impact of customers. There was some impact on customers after that as well, but most of the mitigation was done in 8.5 hours, which tells you, like, this is what we call step 0 incidents. This is all hands on deck. Like, all the engineering leaders were working on it. I still remember talking to my leadership team of what's happening, giving them all the updates. Most of the updates were not great, but we worked through it, and end of the day, we mitigated in like 8.5 hours. So this is an overview of an high impact outage. We start communicating as soon as possible. We start deploying those last good configurations and start moving through mitigation. So I hope this helps you with the AFD incident.
Now, let's take a look at this from how could we do better and what did we learn from this, and also just in general, the industry, how we kind of think about these kind of things. And first of all, something that we have started to do in the last little while is instead of just being dry bullet point form, what it is, what happened, and using jargon and everything else like that, it's definitely turned into more of a timeline and more of a storytelling to be able to explain the impact of everything that it was. When I was talking to Tajinder about this particular one, I was saying, I was getting this notice from outside, the down detector was saying this, and everything else was going there. And he's like, well, did you go to the status page? And did you notice that there was updates that were happening every 2 minutes? And then to clarify, the updates weren't happening every 2 minutes, as you saw from that timeline. When a useful milestone of actual concrete, we've figured something out, that's when the post was. So it was like, happened, 20 minutes later, this is what it is. 45 minutes later, this is our rollback. Like, there's very big steps, and that's the level of granularity that goes on. So having to determine that storytelling piece about those major areas inside the Azure Status Health page is definitely something that's responsible for. Now, as you mentioned, it was like 9-10 hours. Yep. It was a full long day of thousands of people involved on these calls, being able to figure things. You can imagine the level of noise that's going on inside of that, and how to stay true and clear with who's responsible for doing what different things. So there's very defined roles for the people that are joining the call. Some are just listening, but actually making sure they action on these different things that they're responsible for. So very, very dedicated towards how we kind of filter those out and clarify those, and then review to see if they need to be updated and changed. Celebrities one's kind of interesting, because I don't know about you. I talk differently when my boss is in the room, potentially. Sometimes a little too blunt, sometimes I'm guarded, depends on the level of people. Same thing happens to you inside of your environment when something's going on. Well, guess what? Same thing happens inside of a large company that's a hyperscaler as well. If a certain personality, the head of engineering for all of Azure, Satya happens to pop in or something like that, the tone changes on those telephone calls, those bridges that are happening for what's there. You have to stay clear and true to what you're doing to make sure that you're able to get through it. So despite the celebrities being there, you still have to continue on down the path. Process-wise, obviously, Brain goes through and does a bunch of the auto communications of different things, potentially filtering out the amount of noise that it's generating to make sure it's the right amount of noise that gets there. That's the important part. And then also endpoint-wise, as far as our customers are concerned, how do we know how much information to share and when to share it? Again, there was probably about 23 intermediary steps or more that happened between those first 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Which ones are the ones that we surface onto the status page and not? And this applies literally to any hyperscaler and also to you right now as you're dealing with outages on your on-premises world or your hybrid world as well. So it comes across the board. Finding that right balance is important. And we adjust after we go through and try to make it better each time.
Yeah, and the status page is a great example of how we go through that noise as well. Even for small incidents, you'll see that on the status page, and that transparency is in place there.
Yeah.
Okay, after an outage.
Now on this side, this is an interesting build slide, but the idea is that we're trying to make sure that everyone has the proper information, and that we're also trying to make sure that it's the accurate information that you're getting, and everything else is involved in a communication and controlled flow. It's not restrictive, it's simply to make sure that we cover, as you mentioned, that whole irrigation system and not special cases for different customers because of different escalations. And so finding, as an example, the root cause, even in your systems, regardless of their size, it generally doesn't come down to a single thing that did it. These are massively complex systems, and it tends to have more of a cascading effect that then goes off and spiders off into other ones that happen to happen as well. So we tend to stay away from the concept of root cause and instead talk about the full scope and talk about the impacted services.
And there is literally never one root cause.
Yeah.
There's so many things involved in running a large-scale applications. So that's why you'll see in our communications as well. We tell this whole story of the dependencies on different services. So yeah.
And then again, as well, there's no like one person named Bob that pressed the wrong button that caused this as a cascading error effect. And so it's not generally framing this up as being that simple. There is much more color and much more contrast for what goes on inside of these individual issues that pop up. Now, again, simply further clarification, a lot of this happens also with automation. I mean, an interesting thing was with Azure Front Door, as an example, if I can share this one, is it was primarily our caching services in front of our portal that we used. If you were actually using Azure Command Line to talk to your resources, it would have worked. It would have continued. You could ping it. You could see what's going on. You could do stuff all just from the command line. So again, complexity of these different services and how they're all interconnected is complex.
A lot of people did not know that you can still access portal through CLI. So that's what we were talking about in our status page as well. Like CLI is still working. Their dependency on the portal, but CLI is still working.
Yeah. Now, again, the idea of when we do the communications back with the customers and everything else, we obviously are taking feedback from those customers to also improve our processes and everything else. And the whole concept that we have at the very beginning when we started talking about cloud and cloud technologies 15 years ago is we provide you with the platform and all the fabric and all the pieces to be able to go off and build your solutions on top of. We provide you with the SLA and we provide you with those services at a baseline and now also how to monitor them, how to be alerted about them. You build on top of that. We're not going to tell you you're building something wrong and you're exposing yourself to too much risk by only building it in one region in one zone instead of spreading across multiple zones. We're going to educate you and point you to those resources to take a look at different ways to make your applications more resilient if it makes sense to be able to do that. So there's no pointing the blame in one direction or the other for how we handle these individual outages. So shared responsibility is definitely responsible. And then the fact of the nature is it's an extremely complex system that we're working with as hyperscale cloud providers. We don't ever say it's not going to happen again. All we can say is that we learned, we understood the dependencies, we understood how this happened, and we now have decided to go off and increase our communications about what we learned about this. And that's why we have literally a public webcast that you can go to after the event known as an AIR, an Azure Incident Response. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But we'll share all the stuff that we've changed to the dozens of recommendations that have come out of that one to make it so that there's less chance of it happening again.
Exactly, yeah.
And then also, there is no perfect story, but you know, we're here, we're sharing, and I'm glad we're able to do that here at Microsoft Ignite, and we're going to continue to iterate this. In the past, these post-incident reviews, sorry, we're using a lot of TLAs, three-letter acronyms, PIRs. The post-incident reviews have evolved over the years. As I mentioned, they become less static and less technical, and I would call them like weenie focused, just like nerding out on what it is. It's much more something that you can now share broadly within your organization if you get asked questions about what happened and how it impacted you. So again, it's much more of a conversational flow of a story of how things have evolved, including timelines. We move away from talking about root causes because of the complexity for what happens in there. We talk about mitigation steps. Now we're talking about how did we react and what did we change and what did we learn. And then also feedback as well for being able to have live interaction with folks during those webcasts, take their questions and then evolve from those as well. That's basically how we now evolve beyond the PIR, which happens for medium and large, and also is documented for historical purposes if you want to go back.
And we have been teasing this Azure Incident Retrospect, again at TLA, if we call it AIR internally. So this is a really good one to look at. After every big outage, we do a live telecast. We invite a senior leader from that particular service. So for example, the AFD one, we invited the AFD chief to talk to our SMEs on like what happened, what did we learn, and how we can get better. So these live streams are really good to look at. Like I said, we posted every other week now for bigger incidents. So something that you should look into. You can find all the information, all the previous videos. There's a huge YouTube playlist, ak.ms/air/videos, where all those historic videos are kept. For upcoming airs, go to ak.ms/air /upcoming for getting information about the upcoming airs. So I highly encourage you to watch one of these. The link to these respective airs is included in the post-incident reviews. So if you have those alerts set up and you read those post-incident reviews, there will be a link to join this telecast.
Again, very, very factual. It's done in a conversational manner amongst the people that are there, but we have the appropriate executive leaders. This is not going to be something that you're going to see snipped up into a 90-second TikTok video. Yep. It is definitely comprehensive. Yep. And again, I saw a lot of people taking pictures of the slide. You have access to these slides. All the links are live inside of it. You can download them after the event. So don't worry if you didn't get a picture of the slide. You'll have access to these slides after.
Yeah. And we learned that these airs are very popular. The last one we did for AFD, again, AFD became very, very popular. Like more than 1,000 customers joined and asked questions. So our SMEs were on the clock for answering those questions. We got like 100+ questions about AFD there. So we highly encourage you to join one of these airs. So we spoke a lot. I'm trying to summarize this on like what your go-tos are. These are recommendations that we have, how you can prepare for an incident. Summing it up from before an incident, like go to Incident Readiness website. There is whole documentation of how you can prepare in terms of when there are incidents that happen. Another plug for Azure Service Hub. So set up your Azure Service Hub alerts to get notification real time. And learn whatever frameworks that we have on well-architected framework website so you can be as reliable as possible for your applications. During an incident, you can get all the live information on the status page. You can get the same information on your alerts as well. So get that information as soon as possible. If you're still having issues, just contact us through social. This is something that we monitor very, very deeply. But if the mitigation or the problem is not matching what we are talking about in the status page, get contact support. So that's a good way to do it. After an incident, definitely read the post-incident reviews. Those are the note form that you get within 14 days. In bigger incidents, that you get it within 3 days. So definitely check it out. We do these live streams that I was talking about for big incidents. The AFD one happened last Thursday. So definitely check those live streams as well. All those videos are posted on YouTube for you to watch. Again, if nothing is matching with what you are experiencing and what we are talking about, contact support. You can scan the code to get information about the YouTube video that I was talking about for AFD issue that happened on October 29th, where we invited Ashwini, who's our chief for AFD, where we talked for like 45 minutes on what happened, what did the team learn, and how we are improving as a company. So definitely check it out.
And I'll mention at this point in time, again, we're almost at time to be able to wrap this one up. You've been very attentive and paying attention. We really appreciate that. One thing that we're going to say is if this is the kind of session that you like to have, this is the kind of information you'd like to have shared, those evals that you've probably seen the QR code for about 20 times so far, that's your best way of giving us feedback on how we could improve this particular session, or you want to see more sessions like this at future events as well. Again, this one almost fell off the rails and was not going to be offered this time around because of the team not being able to join us. But I'm glad, Tajinder, that you and I decided to come together and be able to put this one on once again. So please fill out those evals. Really important for you to do that. We're going to be down in the experts area if you want to come and chat with us about resiliency or more about other incidents and everything else. But other than that, I do believe.
Yeah,
we are at
thank you
time,
very
my
much.
friends.
Thank you for being
Thank you so much.
Thank you.